Just before we dive into this week's episode, here's a promo.
What historical delights do you have for us today?
Today, we're going to be talking about the Sauchie Poltergeist, Stirling Castle, the Battle of Culloden, the Stone of Destiny.
We are Generally Spooky History, the podcast all about Scotland and its mysterious, grisly past.
This week, we are talking Ancient Egypt and a mummy's curse.
Oh, shit!
I'm Ailey. I'm the one bringing you the stories.
I'm Kieran. I'm bringing you the puns and interruptions.
Join us for the deep dives into Scotland's history and its legends. This script is currently sitting at just over 13,000 words. Get snacks, get comfortable, because this is going to be a really long episode.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you get your podcast.
We really hope you come join us. See you there.
And welcome to CrimeDivers. I'm Laura.
And I'm Jill.
And welcome to Season 8.
Hello everybody, welcome back. Or if you're new here, welcome to Season 8, as Laura just said.
We have had a good break, so we're back and ready to go with some more interesting cases to tell you about.
Yeah, we've had a good few weeks off, so if you remember, I told everybody, I think it was maybe on the last episode or near the end of the last season, that I had a new doggy called Lily. Well,
I have news.
Yeah.
I have a puppy.
Yes, I have a dog. Laura went and got a puppy.
Yes, a brand new puppy. So I've got a little Cocker Spaniel and her name's Piper.
And she is absolutely gorgeous and
crazy.
Yeah, I actually think I have already put her on social media, but obviously not everybody follows us on social media.
And they might just think, oh, who's this random dog? So.
Yeah, so that is Piper. And she is, how old is she now?
12 weeks old now, so she's just going to be getting out on her walking soon, very, very soon.
So her and Lily are best pals now.
Yeah, they like a little run around and a little...
Yeah, they play with each other and...
Maybe a bit too much sometimes, but I mean, she's a puppy, I mean, she's learning and...
Piper likes to bite Lily's butt.
Yes. So hopefully as she grows older, she'll not do that so much.
Yeah, they're going to be best mates. So, yeah, so it's been quite handy having that few weeks off, so we've been... Obviously, because my dog... had some issues, just we've been a rescue dog, so I've been kind of concentrating on her and Laura's been concentrating on our puppy.
Yes.
But what I did do, I had the bright idea of setting up TikToks for both of them. Well, I set up one for Lily and
I've set one for Piper.
Yeah, so Lily, she is actually a brand ambassador, yeah, for a company called Fluff and Stuff. That's it. I had
Fluff and Stuff.
Yeah. So I'm going to be getting a discount code. So if anybody wants to follow my Lily's TikTok, just for cute videos and photos and funny ones and whatever, maybe some collabs with Piper.
Yes.
So she is at lily.thefrenchy5. No. At lily.the.frenchy5. I will put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I was going to say, you better put that in the notes.
And Lily is just spelled with one L.
Yeah.
Lily.
Yeah.
And Laura has set up one for Piper, and she is just all one word, Piper the Spaniel 1.
Yeah.
And again, I'll put that in the show notes. So if anybody wants to come and follow us, that would be really nice.
I know, because I'm hoping that maybe I can get a wee ambassador role for Piper too. I need to put a bit more effort into the actual TikToks, right enough. But
yeah, you've only just kind of...
Yeah, I only did it a couple of times. Well, just last week, I think. And
yeah.
My daughter put on... she did a couple of videos for me because she's better with the whole
video.
Yeah,
she's better at all that kind of stuff.
So I've only really just started it, so I'll maybe try and put some effort into it and get a few more videos out there for people.
Yeah, well, I've got some quite cool ones.
Yeah,
I mean, there's one of them that has got like over 7,000 views on it.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
Exactly. I mean, we set them up less than a week ago, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of my videos has got over 7,000 videos views. So anyway, I think we should really get on with...
Yes, but that's our news. We've had a great break. We've now both got dogs again, because we both had dogs previous, and we both said that we probably we might not get a dog again, and then all of a sudden we have got a dog, so...
No, I said I was never getting a dog again.
Yeah.
I was like, that's it, I'm done, I've had a dog. I'm just laughing at Lily because she's lying on her back right now, in her Minnie Mouse hoodie.
Yes.
You were kind of open to the idea, but I was like, no, not getting one. But the way things have it,
my husband and daughter, they've been at me for a good couple of years going, oh, can we get a dog, can we get a dog? And I've always been the one that's like, no, because I knew that I would be the one having to deal with the dog the most. So I eventually gave in, and do you know what? As much as she's a pain in the butt sometimes and she's doing my head in, and I really don't like the puppy stage too much, apart from the cute cuddles, when I see her with my daughter and I see her face, I mean, I know it's worth it.
It's worth it.
I know
Yeah,
it's
of
worth it.
course.
So I'll just have to power on and get through the stage and get her trained, and she'll be all good.
Yeah, it's just the training.
Yes.
The
No.
what do you call it? Poopy potty training.
Yes, I mean, she's getting that better though. She's doing alright, but we're getting there. But it's just, we'll get there. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I think we've waffled on enough.
Yes, let's get started on our first episode of season 8, which is an episode from Jill. So, as we always ask, where in the world are you?
We're in the UK.
Okay.
UK, okay.
Okay. And the title?
Free to kill.
Okay, right. Shall we just dive in?
Yeah, let's dive in. And can you give my dog a nudge because she's licking her paws? We don't need to be hearing that on the podcast. Okay, let's dive in.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to tell you about Peter Bryan.
Okay.
So, he was born on the 4th of October 1969. His parents were immigrants from Barbados, and Peter was the youngest of 7 children. The family lived in London, and Peter attended Shaftesbury Junior School in Forest Gate, and then Trinity Secondary School in Cannon Town. So he struggled academically, and he was a bully. He stole from other children, and by the time he was 12, he was part of a violent street gang, and he was smoking cannabis.
Yeah.
I mean, by 12, come on.
I know, that's pretty bad.
He would inappropriately touch girls, and he would physically attack boys.
Right.
He was reported for this, but nothing seemed to be done about it. He did get suspended at one point, but that wasn't for harassing other pupils. That was because he slapped a female teacher.
Oh, lovely.
So he left school when he was 15, and he started working on a clothing stall for a while. When he left there, he started teaching cookery at his local soup kitchen. So I'm not sure where he got qualifications from. It was a soup kitchen, so I'm assuming maybe he didn't have to have qualifications.
It would be a voluntary basis, I would have thought. If it's like a sort of homeless kind of soup,
Yeah.
it kind of was, then it'd be definitely a voluntary basis. But, I mean, I guess good on him for helping.
Yeah. By the way, we don't like this guy. Just
I know we don't like him, but I mean, at this point, I suppose, if he's left school and he's out there...
No, I just got the feeling that you were a bit hesitant because you're like, is this the victim or is this... like, should I be...
I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, because at this point, whoever he is, if he's a victim or if he's the killer, murderer, whatever, then we're not at that point yet.
The
perpetrator.
Yes, he is the perpetrator.
Right.
So, where are we? So, his first run-in with the police was when he was 18. One day, the police were called out to his address, which was called the Flying Angel. So, I think it's like an apartment block.
Oh, right, okay.
Like block of flats. I don't know if it was a particular kind, like maybe some sort of housing, like for... You're not getting what I mean, do you? I don't know if it's to me, because the block of flats had a name called the Flying Angel, it seems to me as if it was a place where homeless people go, or maybe where people who are struggling go. That's that's what I'm thinking. It's that kind of thing. You just were not getting that at all, were you?
Not in the slightest.
And the reason for the police attending was because Peter had tried to throw another resident out of an 8th floor window.
Lovely.
So he didn't succeed, luckily enough.
I mean, thankfully, yeah.
But there was a struggle, and Peter ended up with a deep gash to his head, but the police took no further action.
Right, okay.
So he moved about from job to job until he got a job in the King's Road in Chelsea, which I think is quite a posh place, because I'm sure I've heard of it on the TV programme Made in Chelsea, which, for anybody not in the UK, that's a reality show, and they're all posh.
Yeah. Maybe it's posh now, maybe it wasn't posh then.
Because I just thought, I found it quite strange that he would be working on such a posh place. Because I'm sure it is. I'm sure King's Road is like all like an expensive, like all the designer shops and things like that. So the position was as a sales assistant in a clothes shop, and it was a good, solid position, but he soon took advantage of that from stealing from his employers.
Of course he did.
So they soon found out, and of course he was sacked. So, on the 18th of March 1993, he would have been 24 by now, and he got into a row with rival gang members, and he used a hammer to smash up one of their cars, and then he went to a friend's house and he smoked some cannabis and drank some wine. So later that day, about 6:30 p.m, he left his friends and he headed to the clothes shop from where he'd been sacked. And he said to his friend he was going there because the owner owed him just over £100 in wages.
Right.
So he was going to get it back.
Right.
So when he got there, the owner's daughter was working there. Her name was Nisha Sheth, and she was 20. He demanded the money from her, but she refused to give him it, as obviously that was up to her dad to sort that out. That wasn't
Not
up
for
to
her,
her. But Peter was furious and he pulled out a claw hammer, and because he was still carrying it from when he'd smashed up the gang member's car, and he started attacking her, like hitting her until she was dead. So
oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Jesus, I wasn't expecting that. That's quite brutal.
So he killed her. But he said that he didn't mean to actually kill Nisha, though, as when he realised what he had done, he tried to take his own life. It was about an hour and a half after the attack when he was seen hanging by his fingers from a tower block walkway, which was about 30 or 40 feet from the ground, and then he dropped, but he survived, only fracturing both of his ankles.
Oh, right, okay. Not a very good attempt at killing yourself, is it?
No. While he was in hospital, Peter was arrested on suspicion of murdering Nisha and was remanded in custody until his trial. And while he was in custody, he attacked 2 fellow inmates, and he was diagnosed with paranoid psychosis, and because he was potentially dangerous to himself and others, he was moved to the Rampton Psychiatric Hospital in Northampton, which is one of only 3 high-security psychiatric hospitals in England.
Okay.
So you know it's bad when it's a high-security one.
Oh, definitely.
So on the 25th of February 1994, Peter was in court for Nisha's murder, and he pleaded guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. He was sentenced to be detained indefinitely at the Rampton Psychiatric Hospital and would only be eligible for release if doctors believed that he was no longer a danger to the public. To start with, Peter's behaviour was threatening and abusive, but he soon settled into life at Rampton, and he was put on medication for his mental illness. And over the next few years, his antipsychotic medication was gradually reduced and withdrawn as he was no longer displaying symptoms of mental illness. Of course, he was still having sessions with a psychiatrist, and he once admitted that he got a sexual thrill when he killed Nisha, which doesn't make sense to me because he tried to kill himself afterwards. So
well, exactly.
he said he hadn't meant to kill her.
Oh, yeah. So now how can he then change his mind and say that?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting annoyed because the dog is trying to jump up on the bed. Right, come and lie down. Come and get cuddles. Right, come here. Right. You're distracting me. Right, okay. But so after that admission, he was put back on medication, and this again stabilised him, and he did everything possible to persuade staff that he no longer needed to be in a high secure hospital. So he was held at Rampton Hospital until July 2001, when a psychiatric, I always have problems with that word.
Yes, your medical words aren't good.
A psychiatric report stated that, quote, Mr. Bryan does not present a grave and immediate danger to the safety of other persons, end quote. So when his support team believed he was ready to be discharged from Rampton, he was then moved to the John Howard Centre, and that is a medium secure unit.
Right.
He was there for 6 months before his case went before a medical tribunal, and they agreed to transfer Peter to a lower security facility, Riverside Hostel. So this is a facility for men who suffer with mental health and need support, but he could come and go as he pleased.
Right.
So although he wasn't under lock and key, there were still rules.
Yeah.
It was supervised 24/7, but he was still taking drugs when he wasn't in the unit. Right.
So he obviously wasn't trying to get his life together then, was he?
So he still smoked cannabis, and he tested positive for amphetamines, but I didn't read anything about if he got punished for that. I don't know what happened with that.
Yeah.
But He was at Riverside for 2 years, and he had a psychiatrist and a social worker during his time there who recommended that he be released after the 2 years.
Right. As in, like, released from just psychiatric.
Yeah, just completely released.
Right, okay.
So, but it wasn't realised till later in 2009, in an NHS report. I read that wrong. Sorry. It wasn't realised till later, and in 2009 NHS report that failures came to light about that.
Mm-hmm.
So the report states, quote, the two professionals were a psychiatrist who had never before had responsibility for a patient who had killed someone,
right,
and a very inexperienced social worker who had no training in mental health, end quote. So these two people, these two professionals were recommending that he be released.
And really, they, as she didn't have experience, very little, had never dealt with that situation, so maybe their judgments and decision wasn't...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they were good at their jobs and whatnot, but to not have any experience with somebody who's killed somebody, that's, you know...
It's a difficult one.
Yeah, so... And I think that the social worker as well, he had, like, this social worker had no training in mental health. Why is a social worker who's had no training in mental health working with somebody who has mental health problems and killed somebody, you know? That, to me, that doesn't make sense.
No, you would think that...
And this social worker, they wrote to the Home Secretary 3 times pleading that Peter should be released and that he wasn't a danger to the public.
Well,
so...
I'm going to assume he was.
Well, yeah. So he was under the care of a community psychiatric nurse, and that nurse did say that Peter was one of the most compliant service users that they had ever came across, and said he was a nice, calm man. So after being at Riverside for nearly 2 years, Peter actually admitted himself to a psychiatric ward at Newham Centre for Mental Health, and allegedly this was because he had assaulted a 17-year-old girl at a block of flats near his hostel the week before. Now, he denied doing anything wrong, and no further action was taken by the police. But the girl's family were making death threats towards Peter, so for his own safety, he admitted himself. So he's admitting himself, saying, like, yeah, this is what they're saying happened, but I'm admitting myself for my safety.
For your safety,
yeah.
Yeah.
And when he was questioned about the attack, he said that he only blew raspberries on her stomach, and he also said that she stole his phone and she wouldn't give it back to him, so he left. Now, why are you blowing raspberries on a 17-year-old girl's stomach? That's what you do to a child, like... Yeah, like... and with the parents' permission, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
So, yeah, of course, the girl's version of events was very different. She said that he physically and sexually assaulted her. He kept grabbing her and she was fighting him off. She was hitting him and pushing him off her. And while he was assaulting her, he was saying things like, you don't know what I'm capable of. And luckily she did have the strength to, you know, to get him off. And she managed to get him out the front door. So luckily for her, she did manage to get away from him. So because of the death threats, he had to move away from the hostel. He stayed on the psychiatric ward and convinced staff that he was fine, his mental state was much better, and because he wasn't sectioned, he was allowed to come and go as he pleased, because he had admitted himself.
Ah, right, yeah.
So this was now 11 years after he had murdered Nisha. And with the exception of this attack on the 17-year-old, he had made so much progress. Like, he hadn't been violent for years, excluding that attack. Which he said he didn't do, but okay. Yeah. His mental health seemed to be okay, and he looked to be calm and stable, and it probably looked good to the hospital staff that he had admitted himself. Yes, he denied the attack, but to the staff it must have shown that he was being responsible by realising he was having a setback and he was doing something about it. He was being proactive about it, wasn't he? He was like, there's something wrong here, I need to admit myself.
See it like that, I guess,
Yeah, well, I'm assuming that's how the staff have seen it. So on the morning of the 17th of February 2004, Peter, sorry, his name's Peter Bryan.
Yeah, you're close.
I know, but I don't want to call him Bryan because there's somebody else in this case later on called Bryan.
Right, okay.
Like his first name's Bryan, so and I did notice when I was writing this, I kept getting the name wrong a few times.
Wouldn't be like you, would it?
On the morning of the 17th of February 2004, Peter's support team had a meeting. So there was a psychiatrist, psychologist, nursing staff, and all of them decided that he was safe to be put back into the community. And they would start looking for accommodation for him, so he would stay on the ward until they found accommodation for him.
Right.
So that same morning, he told the nurses he wanted to go out for a few hours, and of course that was no problem. They trusted him, they deemed him safe to be out in the community. As I said, he wasn't sectioned, so he was allowed to come and go as he pleased. So off he went, and they expected him back in a few hours. So Peter went, I don't know why I'm calling him Bryan all of a sudden.
Because you've got it in your head now.
Peter went to a hardware store and bought a claw hammer, a Stanley knife, and a screwdriver, and then he headed to his friend's house. His name was Bryan Cherry. Right, listen, Kate, if I get these names mixed up, please tell me, because I don't want to be confusing a victim and a murderer. So Bryan Cherry. So he was 43 and he lived in a ground floor flat in Walthamstow. Walthamstow.
Okay.
So Bryan was described as a really kind, nice man, but he was vulnerable. The few friends that he did have just took advantage of him. Peter and Bryan had met through a mutual acquaintance, but this was a woman who had a drug addiction, and she would just get money from Bryan to pay for her drugs, and then she would go and use her drugs in the flat. So she was just
using them.
Yeah, I mean, like Bryan would let her do that because he just wanted company. He was lonely, but she just used him for money and for somewhere to take her drugs, and all he wanted was a friend, and she just took advantage of that.
Totally.
But this is how they met, like through the mutual friend. So Peter obviously decided that Bryan would be a perfect victim to go and attack. He knew he was vulnerable and lonely and likely to be alone in his flat. So he knocked on the door, and I'm sure Bryan was probably happy to see him, welcomed him in. But as soon as he was in the flat, Peter launched himself at Bryan and started attacking him with the claw hammer. I said hammer. The claw hammer, and he inflicted 24 injuries to Bryan's head alone.
Jeez.
Once Bryan was dead, Peter dismembered his body with the hammer, the Stanley knife, and a screwdriver.
Oh, God. I mean,
I'm laughing at you, not the situation. It's just that every time I mention something like this, Laura is repulsed. But understandable, but it's just the look on her face. And
I just never... Oh, I mean, I'm never going to understand it because I've never been in that frame of mind.
No.
But it baffles me that people could actually do that, like, to someone and actually, like... Because that was obviously a vile, horrific act to do to anybody, but to actually be able to do it is like, you must be really sick.
Of course, yeah. And the fact is as well...
Especially the equipment that you're using.
You just took the words right out of my mouth there. I was just about to say, if you think about it, he's used a hammer, a Stanley knife, and a screwdriver. How...
Oh, that's not...
Well, I'm actually going to sort of describe it a little bit. So just a wee warning... for anybody, if you don't want to listen to this, just skip ahead a few minutes. Well, not a few minutes, like 10 seconds. No. So the pathologist later said that the knives and the Stanley knife, that knife, so he must have took knives from the kitchen as well. So knives and the Stanley knife were used to cut around the flesh at the joint of the shoulder, and then the bones had either been broken or pulled from their sockets. So I'm assuming that's maybe where the hammer... Right, no, I don't think we should really go into it too much.
Like, how does someone think to... Oh, no. No.
So usually with dismemberment, it's difficult to do it with a knife. It's done... Usually it would be done with a saw.
Yeah.
But Peter must have jumped on Bryan's arms and legs in order to weaken them and sever them from his body. So I'm assuming the hammer came into it as well. And...
That's just...
Right, okay, and the next bit's gruesome as well. Just warning everybody.
I'm feeling a bit sick.
You're going to feel it. Oh. Are you okay?
Yeah. Like, just get it over with.
Okay, so then he took some of Bryan's brain and went into the kitchen. He found a frying pan.
Oh my God, did he fry it and eat it?
Can you just... She's getting stressed. If you can hear her nervous laughing, it's because she's stressed.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Well, if you just let me just... take a breath and just let me get over and done with, okay? Because it's not pleasant. Yeah, so he found a frying pan, put some butter in it, and then fried it and ate it. So shortly after, the female that I talked about earlier, the mutual acquaintance, she actually let herself into Bryan's flat. She had her own key, which, Bryan, why did you? I mean, she hasn't done anything wrong, but still, like, this just comes into the taking advantage of. Why has she even got her own key?
Yeah, why has she got a key?
Yeah. She saw Peter. He had no top on, and he was like, sweat was pissing out of him, and he was holding a kitchen knife. And she asked where Bryan was, and Peter just said he's dead. So she went into the living room where his body was, and she could see that his arms had been severed from his body and that his head was just caved in. So she said to Peter, she was like, I just need to do something. And she like just sort of backed out of the flat like as calmly as she could. And luckily he let her. Like she just backed out of there, and she obviously went and called the police.
Yeah, well, at least she did the right thing there.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, that's what I'm saying about the key thing. It wasn't that she did anything wrong. It was just, the thing that the taking advantage thing.
I get that,
But, I suppose it's probably in this instance is just what she did. I don't know. Because she alerted the police, but it was too late. Yeah.
I know.
But imagine if she'd walked in earlier, then she could have been a victim as well.
Well, that's true. That's true.
But even just walking out, can you imagine seeing your friend like that?
No,
that's awful.
That's something you just don't want to see.
No. So within minutes, the police arrived, and they saw that along with Bryan's arms, one of his legs had also been severed. His head was also almost decapitated, and his hands were broken from where he had been trying to fend off the attack. So he fought. If his hands were broken, can you imagine how he must have been fighting?
Yeah, totally.
So officers went into the kitchen and saw the brain and hair matted with blood sitting on a plate with a knife and fork next to it. The frying pan was still in the cooker, and some of the brain was still in it. So Peter was charged with Bryan's murder, and he said, quote, "I ate his brains with butter. It was really nice." End quote.
Yeah.
And because he didn't eat all of the brains, the press nicknamed him Peckish Pete. So he obviously, because he didn't eat all of it, they're saying, he was just peckish. Right, I find that really disrespectful.
Yeah, totally.
That is awful. I mean, I get it, like, you get serial killers, like, you get nicknames like, I don't know, the Yorkshire Ripper, the BTK, like,
like
Jack the Ripper, like, people do get nicknames, but to be called Peckish Pete, that is really disrespectful towards Bryan.
Yeah,
that's awful. And to me, it just sounds really childish.
Yeah,
and
it's just like they thought, what a great headline that'll be, and it probably does grab the headlines. That's the thing, and they don't think of the person behind that. They just want the headline there, and that's like that's like a catchy headline.
That's what's going to sell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's going to sell your newspapers or whatever. So,
but it's just really disrespectful. Like to me, there's a line.
Yeah, and.
No, that's somebody's life.
That's the press all over these days. They cross the lines time and time again.
So it was Peter was assessed by a psychiatrist, and he was deemed fit to be interviewed by the police. He wasn't showing any signs of mental illness. He was perfectly calm and happy to answer questions. He told the police that he had planned to dispose of Bryan's body because, of course, he didn't know that someone was going to walk in on him and phone the police. He said that he was going to. He said he was going to dispose of it piece by piece, so that's why he had dismembered the body, so he could get rid of it piece by piece. He had decided that he wanted to kill again after Bryan, so he obviously didn't want to get caught. As he thought 2 wasn't enough, because obviously he's killed 2 people by now. 2 wasn't enough, he wanted to kill 8 people. I don't know why 8.
Yeah.
He wanted to be a serial killer, but to be a serial killer, I think you only have to kill like 3.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the 8 came into.
Obviously just a random number in his head.
Yeah, and he didn't see cannibalism as a problem. He told police that it was just a delicacy that not everyone wanted to try. It's like, to him, it's like, well, oysters.
Yeah.
It's a delicacy. Some people like them, some people won't even try them.
Which is very true, but...
But to him, that's what cannibalism is. It's just a delicacy that he wants to try it, but not everybody wants to try it.
Humans don't eat humans.
No.
Like, we're not part of the food chain here.
But he also said that he would have actually preferred to kill someone bigger than Bryan because it would have been more of a challenge. And I'm like, well, why did you kill Bryan then?
Well, we obviously just wanted an easy target to start with,
Yeah,
didn't we?
I think so. I think that's exactly it. I mean, he said that he wanted to kill 8 people. I think
He started off with somebody that he thought he could get away with doing it to, and
yeah, because Nisha was a different situation.
Yeah.
That was a
spur of the moment type.
yeah. I mean, he did have a hammer, but I think he had the hammer from an earlier attack on the car. So I'm not entirely sure that he did actually plan that.
Yeah, it was just like a spontaneous.
Yeah, I think he got angry and annoyed with her because he never got the money. But with Bryan, he planned it, and this was going to be his first sort of planned murder.
Just sort of a
tester. Yeah, that's awful.
I know that's terrible, but that's kind of what, if that's what he had planned.
Yeah.
Then I guess that's how, to him, that would probably have been.
Yeah, I think he wanted to try it out on Bryan, and then he would maybe go for somebody bigger after that. Which it's horrible.
Yes.
So he was sent to Pentonville Prison, which is a Category B, but then got moved to Belmarsh Prison, which is a Category A high security facility, and his mental state started to deteriorate once he was there. One day he punched an officer. Another day he said he wanted to punch that same officer again. And another time he assaulted a member of staff. And another time he set fire to his cell. And I'm like, they must have been able to smoke in their cells back then, I'm assuming. Because I don't think they're allowed to now, are they?
I don't know.
You know, I think...
Don't actually know.
Just with the smoking ban and stuff, I would think that they've probably got designated areas where you can smoke. I don't think they'll be able to smoke in their cells now.
I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know.
But that's quite dangerous, isn't it? Like, if you think about it, anytime, like, being allowed to smoke in their cells, that's always been a danger.
Well, yeah, I would have thought so. But...
At one point, he threatened to eat the noses and ears of all the prison officers, and he was so aggressive that whenever they had to go into a cell, they had to use the riot gear, the shields and everything like that, to protect themselves. So he wasn't there long before being moved to Broadmoor, Britain's leading maximum security psychiatric hospital. So for anyone who doesn't live in the UK or just hasn't heard of Broadmoor, Moor or More, I'm not sure if it's Broadmoor or More, Broadmoor. Oh, and the more I sound it, the more weird it sounds.
I don't actually know how it's pronounced.
So this place houses really dangerous men, like Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper. And just on the subject of that, there's a really good dramatisation about him on TV right now called The Long Shadow. Have you watched it yet? I told you should watch it. I bet you haven't.
Well, no, because I need to have time where dogs aren't annoying me. I will watch. I'm on holiday from work for 2 weeks, so I will watch it. Yeah. Not this week, but next 2 weeks.
Oh, John's off as well. Yeah, so it's for anybody who wants to watch it. It's called The Long Shadow, and if you're able to get it where you live, it's on. I think it's on ITV. I would definitely recommend it. It's a really good. It's like 7 parts or something like that, I think, or 6 parts, something. Anyway, so Ronnie Cray, one of the Cray twins, who are famous London gangsters, he was held there. Also, Robert Napa, who killed Rachel Nickel. We covered her case, The Death on the Common. Covered that a while back. Charles Bronson was there, and he is often dubbed Britain's most violent prisoner. Robert Maudsley, have you heard of him?
No.
He was there for a while. His nickname is Hannibal the Cannibal. And he's actually the longest serving inmate in Britain. And I saw an article from January this year saying that he has broken the world record for the longest time in solitary confinement. He's been confined for 49 years, and 45 of those have been in solitary.
Wow.
And he spends 23 hours a day in his cell, which is a glass cage in the cellar of Wakefield Prison. Do you not know that?
No.
Yeah, he's kept in a glass cage in the.
Wow.
That's how bad he is.
Bloody hell.
And Ian Brady was also in there. He murdered children with his girlfriend Myra Hindley, the Moors murders. So anyway, that's the kind of people that Broadmoor houses, and this is where he went.
Yeah.
So he's along with those most dangerous people. In a report that was done before he was admitted to Broadmoor, he was classed as an extremely high risk patient, and that was compared to other Broadmoor patients. So that just goes to show how dangerous they thought he was if they're comparing him to the other patients that are there. So he was only in there a few days before he attacked another patient, 59-year-old Richard Loudwell. So remember, I just said he was deemed a high-risk patient. Well, he was placed in a medium-secure ward. And in the medium-secure area, prisoners are allowed to socialise, and Richard Loudwell was there awaiting trial for the sexual assault and murder of an 82-year-old woman called Joan Smith 2 years earlier.
Why the hell was he not in the high?
Well, exactly. And this Richard, he had disclosed his crime within days of being admitted. So you can imagine the other inmates did not take too kindly to him. Mm-hmm. And he was spat at, assaulted, verbally abused, and ash thrown in his face. Richard had complained to staff about being bullied by Peter and others because they were calling him a nonce and a lowlife. And on the 25th of April 2004, there were about 10 inmates in the dining room, which wasn't supervised. Like, what the hell? A dining room that has knives and forks in it.
Yeah.
Potential weapons, even chairs, like, they can be thrown around or whatever. Like, why was it not supervised?
That's crazy.
And there were 9 staff on duty, so it wasn't lack of staff, but for whatever reason, none of them were in the dining room.
Why aren't they supervising the dining room?
Well, to me, that's the place you should be supervising. There's weapons in there.
Don't get that.
So Peter planned this attack because, remember, he wanted to kill more people. He wanted to be a serial killer, and the other inmates in the dining room knew what he was planning to do, but not one of them said anything, which is probably because the guy's a sex offender and a murderer to an elderly lady, so they probably didn't care. But still, I'm not going to comment on that. No. So Peter took the cord from his tracksuit bottoms and tried to strangle Richard. And when that wasn't working, he grabbed Richard's head and he smashed it against the table a few times. And then when he fell to the floor, he kept banging his head off the floor.
And nobody intervened at this point?
No. And whilst this was happening, the other inmates sang the song Lazy Sunday by the Small Faces to cover up the noise. So they were all having a sing-song. He's beating up this guy. And by the way, I don't know the song. I looked it up. I was like, I've never heard of Small Faces. No. They were a British rock band formed in 1965. So No idea. So staff eventually came in and restrained Peter, and he told them calmly that if they hadn't have came in when they did, he would have killed Richard and eaten him. He later told the police that he kept getting urges whenever he saw Richard, and that he was the bottom of the food chain. He was old and haggard and looked like he'd had his innings, and Peter was just waiting for his chance to get to him. He just wanted to kill him and eat him.
Lovely.
So I'm assuming the reason that he did it in the dining room was because there would be access to the kitchen, and because he had wanted to cook Richard's flesh. So his plan was to kill him and eat him, so he would have to cook him, so that's why he did it in the dining room.
But then how did they think that you'd actually have all that
time? Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea.
That's not like a 5-minute job, is it?
No, exactly. That's what I was kind of thinking when I was researching it. I was thinking, yeah, it was unsupervised, but surely it's not going to be unsupervised for that long. Plus, if the staff can hear the other inmates singing, surely they're going to be like, what the hell's going on? Like, why are they singing?
Let's go and check what's going on. Yeah.
But in his head, that's what he was going to do. Yeah. So Richard managed to survive for 6 weeks, but his injuries were too severe and he died on the 5th of June 2004, so Peter was charged with another murder. He told the police that this murder wasn't just about killing and eating Richard, but that he got some sexual satisfaction from it. And he said that he had actually wanted to have sex with Richard both when he was alive and then once he had killed him. So he was, I don't know where he was getting all the time to do this.
Well, I know.
He was going to have sex, assuming he was going to have sex with him before he dismembered him.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, so obviously in his head he thought that he could do this all, and in reality that was never going to happen. So
he was still at this point, he was still awaiting trial for Bryan's murder. Because remember, he only did this like days into being there. And he had to be examined by psychiatrists from both the defence and the prosecution to assess his state of mind. He said to one of the psychiatrists, "You're very intelligent and you have a lot of power," and then went on to tell him that he intended to get power from his victims' souls and to be notorious as a serial killer and to murder 8 people.
Right, okay.
So on the 15th of March 2005, Peter appeared at the Old Bailey. They weren't taking any chances, and he was heavily sedated and escorted by 5 of Broadmoor's strongest male nurses. And he just sat down and stared ahead the whole time and just didn't seem to know what was going on, probably because he was heavily sedated. So psychiatrists for both the prosecution and defence agreed that Peter was mentally ill at the time of the murders, and one of them said that this was the most dangerous man he had ever interviewed. So Peter Bryan was found guilty on 2 charges of manslaughter under the Mental Health Act and was sentenced to a whole life order in Broadmoor. The following year, the whole life tariff was overturned, but it was said that it's unlikely that Peter would ever be released as he is just too dangerous.
Well, yeah, I don't think he should ever be freaking released.
Well, no, because he's already been released, and look what happened there.
Yeah,
he killed 2 more people. Well, one person while he was released, and then obviously back Richard in Broadmoor, but...
Yeah, no, that's awful. Absolutely awful.
Yeah. What a disgusting, horrible, horrendous case.
I know. That's the thing, I think, like, you know, maybe in, like, sort of now, he probably might not have been released initially, but, you know, it's sort of further back, you know, things like that, like mental health and that, you know, it wasn't, like, as wide known as it is now.
No, but I mean, we're in the 2000s by now, remember? This was like 2004 or whatever.
I still don't think that mental health were that big.
No, I get that. I mean,
years, but
I think we've come a long way in recent years, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, either he played a good game and he just convinced all these people, you know, that he was of, you know, sound mind, and he was, you know, he had reformed himself over the years, etc., etc. And, you know, these people were obviously taken in by that, and maybe it was a plan of his all along for that to happen so that he could go out and kill people again. I
mean, it's bad enough that he killed 3 people, but I'm glad he never got to kill the 8 people that he wanted to kill.
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, thanks to everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
We will. See you later. Bye. If you would like to follow us on social media, we are on Twitter and Instagram, which is crime_divers_pod. We are also on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, which is CrimeDivers Podcast.
If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can email us on crime_divers_pod@outlook.com. And if you would like to support the show, we have Buy Me a Coffee, so that's buymeacoffee.com/CrimeDivers, and you can make a one-off donation. And we also have Patreon, which is patreon.com/CrimeDivers. We have 3 tiers, which are £1, £3 and £5, and you get your bonus content, early access to episodes, ad-free episodes, and obviously that will be in your own currency, whichever country you live in.
And if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review.